The Mona Lisa by Robert Oldshue. Adeline Perry had come to Holy Name years before I started working there. The aides would lift her from her bed every morning. They'd dress her in whatever clothes had come back from the laundry. They'd put her in a wheeled chair and push her to the television room, and there she'd sit. Day after day, week after week, her body frozen, her face twisted, her glasses reflecting the stupidity of the morning talk shows, the afternoon soaps, and the evening news. Or there would be a baseball game. There'd be a special report about a plane crash or a hurricane, or the president would be speaking, and there would be Adeline, hanging from her harness, her mouth pulled into something like a smile. "Mrs. Perry," said Marionetta, the aide on nights, "Mrs. Perry is no here." "Well, did you check the television room?" I asked. "She's no there." "Did you check the dining room?" "She is no there. Mrs. Perry is no anywhere." Now, it might seem that a nursing home with only 2 floors and 47 residents would be a hard place to lose somebody. All the stairways were alarmed. There were cameras on all the exits. There were bed checks, hall checks, and bathroom checks. But the residents who could walk often wandered. And when we looked, we would find them in the chapel or in the laundry or in the telephone room. We once found Mr. Petralia in a closet, and Mr. Semich left the building in her underwear. "Did you check the chapel?" "She is no there." "Did you check the laundry?" "She is no there. Mrs. Perry is no anywhere." The daughter's name was Marilyn. Marilyn had a husband, and she talked about children who were starting to have their own children. There was another daughter, Eileen, or maybe Angela, but her phone number was in Mrs. Perry's chart. But the area code was one I didn't know, and she never called, and she never came. And there was a son who lived in Youngstown, not far from Cleveland, but at Holy Name, we tried to have one person be a spokesman for each family, and he designated Marilyn, and she'd apparently made no objections. "Bernie, you haven't got Mrs. Perry up there, have you?" "Not that I've seen, Joanne. Why, what's the matter? Is the first floor misplacing residents again?" "We've lost Mrs. Perry." "Adeline Perry? How'd you lose her?" "I don't know, Bernie. I was just wondering if you'd seen her." "Well, I've been sitting here at this desk for the last hour. I can see the elevator, and nobody's gotten off. And the kitchen people turn the service elevator off at 9 o'clock when they go home." "Well, can you think where she might be?" "Did you check the television room?" "Yes, Bernie." "Did you check the dining room?" I worked at Cleveland City for 8 years. I'd seen a lot of people die. But in a hospital, you know them for a week or two, a month or two at the very most. At Holy Name, I knew people for 3, 4, 5 years before they died. I knew their quirks. I knew their strengths. I knew their teeth. Honestly, we all did. The residents were always misplacing their dentures, and the other residents were always finding them and then wandering off. Sometimes I hated the residents, I won't kid you. But other times I'd find myself looking for someone who had died several months or even a year before. I'd find myself wondering if I had seen him or her on Medicine Pass that morning or in the posse of wheeled chairs assembled for bingo or mass or physical therapy. And I'd think, how could so-and-so be dead? How can a life just disappear? And it didn't matter that I saw my people dying all the time. I'd see them get a cough they couldn't shake, or I'd see them get a fever. I'd see weight begin to drop, and I'd know. We'd all know. When we try to prepare the family, we try to prepare ourselves. But when the resident died, I'd feel the way I felt when a coworker quit without telling me. "Donna, I'm sorry to be calling you at home, but we've lost Adeline Perry." "Wait, you mean she died?" "No, I mean we turned around and she wasn't there, and now we can't find her." "Was she a patient or an employee?" "She's a patient. You know her. She had a stroke. She's paralyzed." Wait, where could she have gone if she's paralyzed?" "I don't know, Donna. That's why I'm calling you." Well, have you looked for her? Yes, Donna. Did you check the television room? Yes, Donna. Did you check the dining room? Donna told me not to call the family. She wanted to drive in and look around for herself. Not that she didn't trust us, she said. And just before 11, she arrived dressed in uniform, although the rest of us were only wearing white pants and maybe white shoes if we bothered to wear uniforms at all. She came to the desk, and she asked to see Mrs. Perry's record, and she studied it page by page as if to find some error to explain the disappearance. She asked to see the order book, and then the vitals book, and the behavior log, and then she turned to Marianetta. When did you last see Mrs. Perry? 8 o'clock. Where was she? Watching television. Was she alone? I no remember. Did she look unusual? I no understand. Did she look funny? She looked the way she always looked. Donna grilled Marianetta, and then she grilled me, and then she went upstairs and grilled Bernie. He told her that someone had called and asked for $50,000 or Mrs. Perry and her wheelchair would never be seen again. And she believed him. I could tell. I saw how angry she was when she returned. Should we notify the doctor on call? I asked. Well, I don't think there's much he can do. Should we notify Sister Elizabeth? She'll say we should notify the doctor. Do you know who that is? Dr. Rasmussen. Is he good? Good at what? You know, at this sort of thing. You know. Well, as it turned out, Dr. Rasmussen had switched his call with Dr. Kendrick at the last minute, and Donna told him what had happened. So he described a similar situation from several years earlier when a family had come to take a resident home on pass. They neglected to inform the nurses when they left, though, and the staff was frantic until then one of the family called. But the Perrys have never taken Adeline, I said. She's a two-person assist with transfers, and Marianetta saw her at 8 o'clock, and why would they take her in the middle of the night, and why wouldn't they ask to take her medicines? Donna made me place the call. And I did, hoping the phone would keep ringing. What? Someone finally asked. Hello, this is Joanne Caminero, a nurse at the Home of the Holy Home. Is this Marilyn Stoshak? What? The woman said again. What time is it? It's a little after 1:30, Mrs. Stoshak. I'm really sorry to be disturbing you at this hour, but I need some information. Wait, has something happened? Is there an emergency? Well, we're not sure. That's why my supervisor asked me to call you. She wants me to ask. Well, she wants me to ask if you know where your mother is. My mother? Well, she's in the nursing home. Who did you say this was? This is Joanne, Mrs. Stoshak. I think we've met. I'm the nurse on the first. Where's my mother? Well, we don't know. That's why I'm calling. You didn't bring her home today, did you? What? How would I bring her home? Well, and no one else in your family brought her home? My sister lives in San Diego, and you can call my brother, but I can't imagine he would do that. And if he did, wouldn't you people know about it? I made Donna call, Mrs. Perry's son. She dialed the number and sat, her spine straight and slightly away from the chair, and she smiled and said hello and asked him questions. And when she finished, she set the phone down and stared at it for what seemed like a long time. Oh, I should have called Sister Elizabeth, she said. This has gone much too far. Now, fortunately, she decided to make the call from her office, and I could start my bed checks and my charting. So I began to stock the medicine cards for the morning, but at 2 o'clock, right on schedule, Mrs. Kowalski appeared. Honey, could I please have some grape juice? I'm sorry, I said. You know we don't have grape juice, Mrs. Kowalski. We have apple juice, and we have orange juice, and we can give you one of those, and then we can help get you back to bed. No, I want grape juice. I don't want to be in bed. Mrs. Kowalski, why can't I have what I want? Mrs. Kowalski, I am not a child. I want you to give me some grape juice. Is that too much to ask? I was still talking to Mrs. Kowalski when Marianetta said that Mr. Osborne had disconnected his stomach tube. His feeding had soaked his bed and made the floor slippery. She told me to be careful in his room, which I was, but Mrs. Kowalski followed me. I didn't see her in the darkness until I heard the scream and the kind of crack you hear when somebody fractures their hip on linoleum. "Ah," she said as I turned on the light. "Ah," she said again as I tried not to believe what I was seeing. Marionetta and Denise, the other aide on nights, helped me pull a sheet beneath the poor woman and lift her to a stretcher, and we rolled her to the nurse's station, and I called Dr. Kendrick and the family, and as I was holding for the triage nurse in the emergency room, Donna returned, and she looked as if a resident had assaulted her. "Sister Elizabeth says that I'm incompetent." What? "She said that I've been promoted beyond my talent." "Oh, get out of Dodge." "She said that I've compromised the future of Holy Name." The home of the Holy Name, or the home of the Holy Ghost, as Bernie called it, was owned by the Diocese of Cleveland. And every year they talked about closing us. The home was too small to be efficient, they said, or it was too big to be efficient, or it was too dependent on welfare cases, or not dependent enough. The home was stuck between a car wash and a discount department store on Fairmont Boulevard, too far from the city to be a mission and too far from Shaker or Beechwood for families with money. The diocese was always discussing the future of Holy Name. And Sister Elizabeth was always discussing the ways we had compromised it. "You don't care," she would say. "You show up late. You take all your sick days. You waste the paper towels." "Oh, come on, Donna," I said. "Sister Elizabeth says that to everybody." No, not to me," she replied. "Not like she said it tonight." The triage nurse came on the line, and then I described Mrs. Kowalski. I listed her allergies, her medications, her medical problems. "Well, at least she's taken care of," I told Donna. But the night's activity had woken other residents as well. Mr. Thomas said he had a stomachache. Mrs. Cleary said he had a fever. Mr. Donovan convinced Mr. Winchell the building was on fire. And Denise said Mr. Piva was having chest pain. "Oh, he'd do it again," said Marionetta, shaking her head. "Mr. Osborne, he pulled out his stomach tube. He'd do it again." Mr. Messier worked in the kitchen. He didn't say much, and I never knew if his English was poor or if he was angry or just, quiet. "All right," he'd say if we greeted him. "All right," he would say if we asked about the meal trays. But that morning when he arrived, there was Donna and Sister Elizabeth. There were the residents up and wandering. There were the police. And there was Mrs. Perry's son. And there was a girl from the Plain Dealer. And there was Mrs. Perry. She was on the service elevator. "Diable!" Mr. Mercier exclaimed when he unlocked it. Marionetta heard him, although later he said he was kidding. "Yeah, he no kidding. He's scared. He plenty scared. I plenty scared. Everybody plenty scared." We decided that a resident must have rolled Mrs. Perry onto the service elevator sometime before it was shut off, and then forgotten. And the doors had closed. And Mrs. Perry had sat there, frozen and mute, for 10 hours. But none the worse for wear for the experience as far as we could tell. We took her pulse, we took her blood pressure, we listened to her lungs, we cleaned her up and we changed her, and after we fed her breakfast, we rolled her into the television room. What else could we do? "Live and learn," said Donna. "We'll have to make a new policy for the elevator." "Good for Mrs. Perry," said Bernie. "I always thought she had some fun left in her." "The diocese will never understand," said Sister Elizabeth. "This event has seriously compromised the future of Holy Name." Dr. Chandar was my favorite among the doctors, but if you didn't know him, he could seem a bit lazy, but he knew what he could do and what he couldn't. And he once said that we didn't really help the patients at Holy Name. We aged them until their problems were exquisite. And this one was a Mona Lisa, he said. I had the next day off, And the day after that, I didn't start until 11 p.m., and Mrs. Perry was already in bed, so I didn't see her until the following day. "Hey, Adeline," I said when I got to the television room. "It's me, Joanne. Hey, you know what I heard? I heard you tried to leave without paying your bill." But the woman didn't move. She didn't blink. She was watching the television, her mouth pulled into something like a smile.